Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from in the world today. And you may be seeing this as a rebroadcast. So, welcome. I'm Stanley Dietrich, your host with a Stronger Futures Project. And I'm joined today again with Tracy Borson. And today, what we're going to talk about is the power of questions and how you have more power than what you actually probably give yourself permission to express and also engage in. And one of those things is asking who we perceive as the experts. And my take on it and my understanding of it, as I've been around this environment for many, many years, and I watched the outcome and also the experience that my mom had in the medical industry, and the idea that if we're practicing anything, it's a practice, and practice is, hey, we don't even know if it's going to work. We're going to throw it out there, and we're going to see what happens. I began to ask questions when I was a very young child, and I continue to ask those questions. And one of those key areas is when it comes to regarding my health. When I sense that something is off and I have an intuition, I have a feeling that things are out of order, I can go and get tests. And if it's an interval, if it's an intermittent experience, it can be like taking your car to a mechanic when you know that something is out and you take it and they go, there's nothing wrong. We put it in the diagnostics, we've run the test, we've done the blood test, everything is normal. My understanding, the more that I'm around this, is normal. If you're in the normal, you're already in trouble. And this isn't coming from an uneducated presentation. This is coming from medical doctors who have gone to the schools, who have gone to the best schools, and they are the top in their profession. And they are challenging the profession, the questions, and the medical industry. And what I want to present today is, what are you asking the questions, and what advice are you taking at face value based on a professional opinion or an expert's opinion when it may not be the thing that we need to be doing. So with that, Tracy, welcome.
Thank you. I love this topic. So, for those of you who might be watching or watching the replay, if you're watching live, last week we talked about the power of questions. And so, one of the things that came out of that conversation, shockingly, was more questions. More questions about who are we asking questions to. And we kind of wrapped up that episode talking about like asking questions externally, asking questions internally. And so we thought it'd be really cool to take this and talk about, when we're asking questions externally, what is our internal experience of that? Or are we asking those same questions internally? And while Stanley kind of set the stage for the conversation in terms of a medical perspective, I think this is equally true to all of the experts that we research from, learn from in our lives. And so for me, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a marketing consultant specifically focused on authenticity and how you can do things that work for you. And there's a lot of people on the internet who want to try to convince you that they are an expert at things. And now it's even more complicated in that sense because, like, yeah, you could go to an actual doctor or you could Google your question and see what Dr. Google has to say about it. And if you're watching this, you don't even have to raise your hand because I know it's almost everybody who has searched a symptom and been like, what is this possibly a symptom of? And then it pretty much tells you that you have some kind of either chronic or deathly illness that you have to go and get treated immediately. And anyway, so we look for that type of information, but we also look for business type of information. So people are looking for marketing information. They're looking for how to finance their business. They're looking for how to structure a business. They're looking about how to do sales. People are searching for everything on the internet nowadays. And there's people who are very good at looking like an expert. And there's some people who even, like, I'll be honest, I've had knee surgery, and I would actually say that of the medical professionals I've dealt with, my knee surgeon was like a guy who knew his stuff, right? He's a knee surgeon, he does knee surgery, right? He's not even part of the process of determining whether or not you need surgery. He's just the guy that comes in and says, like, I do this. And he gave me very good advice on how to rehab and how to take care of it and when to do what, and all of those things. So there are people who are experts who will give you good advice, but how do you decide who those people are? And
Exactly.
instead of just letting society tell you, oh, the doctors are experts and the lawyers are experts, how do we tap back into that, like, intuition that we have that says, I don't really know if this advice is right for me.
Yeah, the thing of it is, and I share this over and over, that nobody knows your body as well as you do. You are with it 24/7, and whether it's a physical therapist or whether it's a medical doctor, I say challenge the narrative, find out why, ask the questions. You have the responsibility, and what responsibility is, it's the ability to have a response. So when somebody tells me something, I'm going to ask the question, what is the cause of that? If they say they don't know, then that automatically brings up a red flag. Now, I'll give you an example. My mom, she struggled with cancer, and she had cancer. She had it for 3.5 years, and she ended up dying from cancer. Now, in December, she died in February of 20, or in 1998. It's hard to say 19 now, in 1998. And in December of 1997, the doctor came in and said, "Hey, we're going to replace her hip." And I'm like, "What?" She had bone cancer. Well, she had bone cancer. She had cancer. It started in the bladder. And once it broke through the bladder, then it went into her lymph nodes. And here again, why are we removing lymph nodes when they are the body's garbage dump? Okay. Rather than learning how you can increase, how you can flush your lymphatic system a natural way, without drugs, without medicine, without surgery, and do this for your health. Why is this not being done? So anyway, the doctor comes in and says, we're going to do hip surgery. And I go, are you crazy? She's not a candidate. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I know enough common sense. She's not a candidate. And he said, oh no, she's definitely a candidate. I said, doctor, let me explain something to you. I'm not sure what side of the bed you woke up under, but she's not a candidate. She's got bone cancer. She's been in a plastic girdle from her waist up through her chest. She had bladder cancer. It got into her lymph nodes. Now you're going to put her through a surgery. She can't even walk. She can't even get out of bed. She is not a candidate. And we had this conversation. I'll say that it was a conversation. And she didn't have the surgery. I stood my ground. And she ended up dying then. The surgery, hip surgery, was not going to do anything different. And the more that I am familiar and the more that I get around an awareness of what's going on in our body, when I work with people in pain, they tell me that they've got arthritis and they've got it in one knee. And I said, well, why do you have arthritis in that knee? Well, the doctor said it's just to be expected with age. And I'm like, oh, really? That's interesting. Because when did you get the other knee? Well, that's a dumb question. I got it when I was born. I said, wouldn't it go to reason if it was age related that you would have it in both knees and that other people would also have? How come there are people your age that don't have arthritis in their knee? Is it genetic design, or is it the lifestyle? Is it the food that we're eating? Is it the disposition of your body, the position of it? How are you operating your body? And when we start to ask these questions, now we challenge that narrative. And so, like you said, there's so many people that go to Dr. Google and they pull up something and they go, oh my gosh, I remember a lady calling me and saying, I've got trigger finger. And I said, you've got trigger finger. What is trigger finger? Well, she said, I just want to do like this. And I said, where did you get your diagnosis? Well, I did a search online and I've got all the symptoms. Now, if somebody feeds you information, now you start to put the pieces of the puzzle together and you go, you know what? You're right. I do have that. I did
Let
wake
me
up.
just pay you X
Yeah,
amount of money for you to
yeah,
solve my problem
yeah,
now.
exactly. It's like going to the fair psychics where they're watching your body language and they go, there was a girl, and you go, yes, there was, and she had blonde hair. Wait, they look at you and you're looking up and you're going, yeah, she did have blonde hair, and they go, she had blonde hair and she was the center of your heart, and you go, she was. Now this was in the first grade, okay,
Yep.
and this is what happens.
Although I'm pretty sure that still happens at
It still
fairgrounds
happens
on
at
the
there.
daily.
So when it comes to our health, when it comes to our business, when it comes to our life, asking the questions, you have the right to ask the questions. And this is the power of what we've been given. Does it really need this prescription? Do people really need to be on 13 to 24 prescriptions? A lineup of a cocktail of prescriptions happens every day.
Yep. This is okay. So when was it? On Tuesday on my Crazy Stupid Marketing show, the concept of imposter syndrome came up, and I feel like from a business perspective, especially from a like entrepreneurial perspective, this is one of those things that the industry has created to
Mhm.
convince you that you have it, and then they give you all of these. Do you have this? Do you experience this? Oh, you have imposter syndrome. What you need is a coach that can help you move through imposter syndrome. And the thing that drives me nuts about this, and I mean, if you're watching today and your experience is that you have imposter syndrome, I'm not trying to say that your experience is invalid, but this is an opportunity for you to test, where did you get that information from? Did you get that information externally, or did you actually get that information internally? Because what I challenge people to explore is that as humans, we all have self doubt. We try to attempt a new thing and we're not quite sure if we can do it because we've never done it before. So we don't know. We have self doubt. Every human has self doubt at some point. If you're a parent, you for sure have had it because you're like, what? How am I supposed to take care of this kid? I mean, like, we figure it out as we go, but we all have doubts. But what the coaching industry has done is it's manipulated the concept of self doubt, which we all have, into a problem that you specifically have that you now need to pay me to fix. And if you didn't see the other show, my definition, what I always say about imposter syndrome is so long as you're trying to be an imposter, you will feel like an imposter because you are. This is more about like being who you are. But again, my perspective, but I feel like in the business sense, this is equally true. And also, a bigger challenge in the business sense is that we think that what our body is experiencing isn't relevant, right? So if you're talking about a medical symptom, you probably have some kind of physical something going on. You have an ache, you have a pain, you have a joint that is stiff, like there's something physical that is occurring. And so then when we have a conversation about, okay, like what is your body telling you, right? Like how do we read this? It makes sense to people logically. But then when you go into a business sense and you're like, well, how do you feel about imposter syndrome? And people are like, no, this isn't about feeling, right? This is about like me having a problem and you needing to fix it. Like in Calgary right now, our main water line is broken. And so we've been on a like stage 4 water ban for the past week.
Wow.
And a week today. And that's it's a pipe, right? It's a pipe That's broken. The only thing that can be done is the pipe has to get fixed, and then it needs to get flushed, and then we will hopefully have water again by the end of next weekend. But from a business sense, it's generally not that simple to say, hey, there's water flooding the streets, the pipe is broken. Right? It's not that easy to tie the symptom, water on the street, to the cause, the pipe is broken. So we don't actually fix the broken pipe. And it's because we're not allowing ourselves to have that human experience that says, okay, someone told me that the water flooding is due to this pipe. Okay, could I ask a question, right? Like, oh, my husband was like, oh, that's why there was no water at the hockey arena when everyone was trying to shower. Yeah, that's why. But when you start to ask those questions and you allow that intuition back into the conversation, and you can tap into the intuition to ask the questions, then you have the ability to discover for yourself, like, oh, hey, maybe I don't have imposter syndrome. Yeah, I'm doing something new. So, like, I'm not quite sure how to do it, but that means I just need to try something. That's my perspective. But also, what I tell people from a marketing perspective on the daily, probably, is that I'm sharing my interpretation of this right now. Some people are going to listen to it and be like, yes, good point, right? This makes sense. And there's going to be people who listen to it and be like, this lady's out to lunch. Like, what is she talking about? That is what we're talking about. That alignment of, like, when you hear a thing and you're like, okay, yeah, that aligns with the things that I believe and the things that I'm feeling. Okay, great. Give it a try. But if it doesn't, and my best example, I've shared it on this project before, was my dentist told me that I have recession of my gums and that I should go see the gum specialist to see if I should have surgery. And so I went to see the gum specialist because that's what they recommended that I do. And they're like, yep, you need 3 surgeries. Not just one, 3. And I will tell you, every time I go to the dentist, I'm like, what else can I do about this? Like, what can I do to stop the speed of the recession or whatever? And they're always just like, they have nothing. They have nothing for me, except now gum surgery. And I was like, I don't think so. Right? I don't think this can't be the only thing.
Right.
I have to be asking the wrong people. And it seems like the right people, right? Gum specialists, dentists, they should know these things, but they're not giving me anything helpful. And so then off the cuff, I let it slip to Stanley in one of our conversations. And he was like, oh, well, you could just try this combination of water and hydrogen peroxide in your water pick. And I was like, oh, well, that's easy. Might as well try it, because the worst thing that's going to happen is I'm still going to have to go have this gum surgery, but maybe I won't have to. And I tried it and I didn't have to go get the gum surgery. So when you're being told these types of things, whether it is in a medical scenario or it's in a business scenario, and you don't feel that it's right, notice I didn't say think. It's not about thinking. It's about feeling. You don't feel that that is right. And especially you don't feel like that's right for you. Ask the question, get a second opinion, right? At the end of the day, stand up for yourself and
Exactly.
your beliefs. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the thing, that as I work with people in my postural alignment, I'm a postural alignment specialist. So I teach people how to become pain free without medicine, without surgery. And there's a strategy behind this. It's not just doing exercises in a random order, it's doing them in a specific order. And it's also looking at what's going on in the body and questioning. So when people will come to me, and I've had people that have come to me and they've been given a diagnosis based on an expert's opinion. But what we are actually discovering, and you can do the research on this, but experts are so fine tuned that they don't even think about. This is why there's so many specialists and they focus on one element. Like you have now, you can't go to a dentist and get a root canal. You have to go to just a root canal specialist. That's all he does. And the person that puts a crown in is not the person that does the root canal. The same office doesn't do that. Now you've got you've got people that are ear, nose, and throat, and you've got one person that focuses on just the nose. And then you've got another person that focuses on an element of the nose that the main nose doctor doesn't focus on. Now you've got all these little sub experts. And so you're being broadcast. And if you go to a general practitioner, nothing against them, they've gone to school. But my question is, and the reason that I question is because I find myself in the environments with doctors who have been the top in their line, and they're coming out and they're saying there is a better way. It's not about pharmaceuticals. It's not about masking the pain. It's about correcting it. And when you have that gut instinct, then you have that gut feel like something's not right. There has to be a better way. That's your intuition telling you, ask more questions. I went to my doctor and I had some tests done, and I had a very comprehensive panel done. And I said, so what was my blood work like? Because I went over and above what they had originally requested. And he said, your numbers are normal. They're okay. And I said, that's it? He said, yeah, nothing to worry about. Well, not all of my numbers were right. They may have been normal, but and this is coming from medical professionals that say, if your numbers are normal, you're already in trouble, because the parameters are so variant. So if the number is normal from, let's say, 30 to 70, and you're on the bottom scale, you're on the bottom of that scale, but yet you fall in that normal range, you're in trouble.
Well, and I think one of the other things is that you only get those tests done when you're sick. Okay? So people don't necessarily know what is your normal. Like, what is normal for me? So my dad specifically has had doctors tell him that he's dead based on his blood pressure.
He's
Right?
what?
He's dead.
Okay.
Because his
I
blood
thought you
pressure
said.
is naturally very low. It is below the norm. And so I mean, obviously they're joking because he's sitting there in front of them being alive, but like, that's his norm, right? That's not below normal. That's his normal, but you don't know his normal because we don't track our normal. And this is
Exactly.
also the thing, like, when we look at this from a business perspective, this is actually the same. This is why I love this conversation so much, because there's so many parallels. The way my heart beats is actually irregular. I have an irregular heartbeat. And I've had it checked, and I've had my circulation checked, and I've had like all the things checked, and it's normal. And so, however my blood pumps, although irregularly, it pumps blood through my body, right? I've been an athlete for most of my life, right? I have good cardio. That's me. That's me. And that's okay. It's not like I'm going to go have heart surgery to try and get my heart to beat exactly like everybody else's heartbeats. This isn't actually a thing, right? Maybe there's a general rhythm, but no two hearts are identical. They don't pump the same. And from a business perspective, this is also true. So the heart of your business, it pumps blood to the rest of your business organization, but it has a unique pulse that it goes to actually get the blood flowing in the most efficient way for your body. And when we go to the internet, and even some experts, as Stanley mentioned, they're going to try and get us back to the quote unquote generic average. This is what works for most people, right? This is how all tech companies build their marketing program. Well, that's not true. Plus, it can only ever possibly be true based on a past That's a group analysis. Right? So this is what these people are doing. We sum it up and then we sell it to everybody. Except even those people who are all doing those things aren't the sum. They're the contributors to the sum. So they're all unique in their own way. And then we start to buy the easiest thing for the greatest amount of people. Right? The easiest thing for the greatest amount of people is to take Tylenol so that you don't realize you're in pain. Yeah, that is the easiest thing for most people because it takes away my pain and it takes the pressure off the medical system to have to diagnose what's actually wrong with me, right? Or we did another episode about like pain management and stuff. So if you're interested in that, go back and check that out. But none of us are the global average. So if your medical information or your business information is coming out of something that's treating everything like the global average, nobody can have a successful business unless they have email marketing. Nobody can finance their business by crowdfunding, right? It's just like straight up not true. And the only way to be able to sort through the baloney, although I do love to eat bologna, is you have to run it against your own filter and say, like, do I think that's true? And I don't want to get too much into like other topics, but if we look at the education system, if we look at the way the corporate work environment is structured, like people don't have opportunities to say, what do I believe about this? Do I believe this is the right strategy for our business? Do I believe that this is how I would parent? Do I believe that I don't know. I have problems with the way kids do art in school, even though most of them don't do art in school anymore. And they'll be like, here's the picture, draw the picture. And this creativity, right? That's duplication. How do we like turn on people's imagination? That's not the way. But we are not given space to practice the skill of that. So then we don't have the skill of being like, well, what do I think about that? Is that right for me? We don't have that skill. So was really the reason behind the conversation today, was to create space for people to identify, do I have that skill? And if I don't have that skill, what are some ways that I can get started so I can start practicing that skill? So Stanley, I'm going to throw that back at you. What are some ways we can start practicing? What would I do?
Yeah, so the idea is to give yourself permission to ask the questions and take your right to ask those questions, no matter who it is, no matter what it is. When you get pulled over by a police officer and he says, do you realize that you were speeding? He's asking you a question. He's giving you the option to say, yes, officer, I know that I was speeding. I wasn't paying attention. Or no, I didn't realize that I was speeding. Yes, you were doing 75 in the 55 zone. So if you're unaware how fast you're going, you have some other elements that are taking place. Now, is it that you're being obnoxious? No, I would say no. Sometimes we can get distracted and we can allow other thoughts to come in. And the next question he'll ask is, and I haven't had a recent experience with this, but I do have a good memory. Are you in a hurry to get somewhere? And when he asks those questions, it gives us the permission to answer honestly. It's the same way with us. If we're asking questions, we're actually taking the ability to have a response that can either align or not align. And if somebody's telling you pain-wise that this is the only option, I'm going to say challenge that narrative and find out if there's anybody else in your close vicinity, or is there anybody else that has dealt with this and what did they do? And give that a consideration. When you talk about a heart palpitation, I would say, number one, what is the quantity of caffeine that you're ingesting a day? And what is the quantity of sugars that you're ingesting in a day? And I became like allergic to caffeine. Like I can't have a lot of caffeine because it will make my heart palpate. And I never understood what was going on. So I went to my doctor and I asked him, I said, what is happening? They put me on an EKG machine and it was sporadic. And then he finally came out and said, here's the deal. You're allergic to caffeine. You can't have caffeine. And so it's by asking those further questions and not taking it as the only thing. When you ask questions, now you can get to break that down and you can take that power back into your own life and create a greater outcome than you can imagine. So I know that we're going to wrap this up early today, but you know your body and your experience better than anybody else. If you're not getting the answer that you're hoping for, ask questions. Continue to ask questions until you feel comfortable with it. And if you don't feel comfortable with it, then prove that, create that to be a truth, and see what else is possible. And here again, you can only create the future that you want if you attempt to create that future.
It's true.
So thanks for joining us today. If you have enjoyed this podcast, remember to like, subscribe, and share. And I look forward to seeing you. I'll be back in a couple weeks, and I will have a new host on that time, a co-host at that day. So join us for that conversation. You won't want to miss it. And I will see you then. And in the meantime, have an outstanding day.
Thanks, Dave.